The obsidian shard, a sliver of Freya's shattered will, pulsed weakly. The amorphous entity, born from the void and the remnants of Freya's sacrifice, lunged. Its nascent hunger, a chilling echo of the primordial horror, drove it to protect the shard. This tiny, glowing ember was all that remained of the crimson eye of Freya's defiance. But the void entity, a consuming darkness, was relentless. It advanced, its formless mass rippling with an insatiable desire to absorb everything. The obsidian shard, now detached from its larger counterpart, trembled. It seemed to whisper, a faint, spectral sound almost lost in the oppressive silence of the void. Memories, sharp and agonizing, flooded the void. Pain, raw and primal, emanated from the shard, a desperate plea for recognition. The amorphous entity, though barely formed, understood. It was Freya's pain, her sacrifice, made manifest. It shielded the shard with its own burgeoning form, a futile gesture against the overwhelming power of the void. The void entity paused, its attention shifting from the shard to the amorphous protector. A subtle change occurred in its shadowy mass. It began to coalesce, not into a defined shape, but into a more focused, predatory presence. The spectral crimson eye, now barely visible within the amorphous entity, flared with a desperate, defiant light. It was Freya's will, fighting back with the last vestiges of its power. But the void was ancient, vast, and hungry. It did not seek to destroy, but to assimilate, to erase all distinct existence. The obsidian shard, the source of this resistance, was its primary target. The void entity extended a pseudopod of pure darkness, reaching for the small fragment. The amorphous entity shrieked, a sound that was not of this reality, a symphony of terror and pain. It threw itself in the path of the void's advance, its own form beginning to fray at the edges. The spectral eye within it flickered, its light dimming. The void's touch was corrosive and unmaking. Yet, as the darkness neared, the obsidian shard pulsed once more, brighter than before. It was not a pulse of defiance, but of understanding. A final, silent farewell. Then, with a sound like a dying star, the shard fractured. Tiny motes of obsidian light, imbued with Freya's memories, scattered into the void. The amorphous entity recoiled, its protective stance broken. The void entity, momentarily sated by the dissipation of its immediate threat, turned its attention to the scattered fragments. It began to drift, to absorb these tiny echoes of Freya's will. As it did, the amorphous entity changed. The void's touch, instead of destroying it, seemed to imbue it with a new purpose. The spectral eye within it widened, no longer filled with fear, but with a terrible, nascent curiosity. It saw the void entity not as an enemy, but as a source. A source of forgotten power. The void entity, having absorbed the scattered fragments, now seemed more. Its mass expanded, its darkness deepened, and within its depths, for a fleeting moment, a single, crimson spark ignited. The amorphous entity felt a kinship, a terrifying resonance. The spectral eye focused on that spark. It was not Freya's will anymore. It was something new. Something born from the void, from the memory of pain, and from the ashes of sacrifice. It was a hunger that mirrored its own, but amplified, ancient. The amorphous entity, driven by this newfound resonance, began to move. Not to protect, but to join. To merge with the growing darkness. The spectral eye blinked, and the amorphous form surged forward, embracing the void entity. As they merged, the last remnants of the spectral crimson light vanished. Only the void remained, now a more potent, more conscious entity. And from its depths, a voice, not spoken but felt, echoed through the emptiness. It was the voice of oblivion, and it whispered a single, chilling word, ours. The void entity, now a singular, colossal presence, turned its attention back to the silence. It had consumed the echoes. Now, it would consume the source. The spectral eye, now completely gone, left a void within the void. And in that void, a question formed, not from Freya, but from the remnants of her sacrifice, now intertwined with the cosmic horror. What happens when the echo of a will becomes the architect of its own oblivion? The answer hung in the darkness, unanswered, as the void entity began to expand, its hunger now a cosmic certainty. The final battle for existence had not ended, it had merely changed form. And the fate of all nascent worlds now rested on this single, fragile point of defiance, a point that began to glow with an impossible, terrifying light, promising everything or nothing.